Obese African housemaid discovers she's pregnant by her Arab boss. But what she sees next will break her. She had only come to the Middle East for a job, a better life, and a chance to send money back home. But what began as quiet servitude in a mansion of marble and silence became something else entirely the night her boss, a powerful Arab executive with a secret of his own, entered her room in the dark. Months later, she felt the weight growing inside her, not just in her belly, but in her soul. And when she finally built up the courage to speak, what she saw that day destroyed her. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. This helps us bring more inspiring and dramatic stories like this straight to you. Now take a deep breath because this story will take you to the edge of human emotion and back. Amina never expected silence to be so loud. In the mansion of Mr. Zaid al-Hariri, silence echoed off the polished marble floors and endless glass walls. Every morning she swept the grand halls with her wide feet pressing gently into the cool stone, her dark skin glistening with sweat before the sun had fully risen. Her uniform was always too tight, tight around her waist, tight under her arms, tight over the soft flesh that spilled out no matter how she adjusted it. Still, she did her work without complaint. She had come from Lagos 6 months ago, answering a job posting that promised decent pay and accommodation. What she hadn't expected was how invisible she would feel. The other workers rarely spoke to her. Mr. Zaid himself, tall, immaculate, always in a crisp white dish dasha, would pass by her as though she were air. At first, she was thankful for that. She wasn't here to make connections. She was here to survive. But things changed the night the power went out. She had just finished scrubbing the last of the kitchen counters when the lights blinked once, then went black. The whole mansion fell into darkness, broken only by moonlight bleeding in through the large arched windows. Amina froze. She hated darkness, ever since she was a child. Slowly, she began to make her way toward the servants' quarters, feeling the edges of furniture with her hands, whispering prayers to herself. Then she heard it, the soft creak of a door opening behind her. She turned. A flashlight beamed directly into her eyes. She raised her arm to shield herself. "It's me," came a voice, deep, calm, unfamiliar and familiar all at once. It was him, Mr. Zaid, holding the flashlight in one hand, a phone in the other. He stepped closer. "I didn't realize anyone was still awake," he said. Amina swallowed. "I was just going to my room, sir." He looked at her for a long time, for the first time, and that was the beginning. It started with glances, then came small conversations, then offers to bring her tea instead of the other way around. The house staff began to notice. Some whispered behind her back. Others stared. Amina didn't know what to make of it all. She didn't understand the sudden warmth in his eyes, or why her own heartbeat shifted when he stood near. Then one night he knocked on her door. He didn't say much, just looked at her. There was something raw in his expression, something lost, something lonely. She stepped aside. They didn't speak. Not that night. Weeks passed. Then came the nausea, the dizziness, the missed cycle. Amina sat on the edge of her bed one evening, holding a cheap pregnancy test in her trembling hand. The little pink cross stared back at her like a sentence. She couldn't breathe. How would she tell him? More importantly, should she? She waited 2 more weeks, hoping the truth might fade like a bad dream. But her belly didn't shrink. Her emotions didn't settle. She began to feel changes in her body, tightness in her breasts, sudden tears at nothing, cravings. At night, she lay awake with a pillow clutched to her chest, whispering the names of her mother and grandmother for strength. Finally, one afternoon when the sun hung low and the air was golden, she climbed the stairs to Mr. Zaid's private study. She knocked. No answer. She pushed the door slightly, just enough to peek inside. And what she saw made her legs go weak. Zaid wasn't alone. He stood near the window, smiling, with a tall, elegant woman in a deep green dress. She was beautiful, slim, with long dark hair and perfect posture. The woman was holding a child, a baby that looked exactly like Zaid. Amina couldn't move. Her mouth went dry. Was this his wife, his family? Was she just another hidden chapter in his secret life? Her heart slammed against her ribs as she backed away from the door, her vision blurring. She ran, down the hall, down the stairs, past the marble lions guarding the entry. She didn't stop until she was outside, under the open sky, gasping for air. She was pregnant, and she had just discovered that she wasn't the only one. Amina didn't sleep that night. She sat on the edge of her narrow bed, her hands buried deep in her lap, fingers twisted together like rope. The air in the room felt heavier than usual, thick with the weight of everything she had seen. Her stomach turned, not from morning sickness, but from betrayal, confusion, and shame that burned through her like fire. The woman, the child, the smile on Zaid's face. She had convinced herself that what they shared, whatever it was, meant something. That maybe, just maybe, she had been seen. Not as a servant, not as a body, not as a secret, but as a woman. She was wrong. The mansion was quieter than ever the next morning, but that didn't mean it wasn't watching her. Amina had learned long ago that in houses like this, walls had ears. Someone always knew, and they talked. When she walked into the kitchen to begin her duties, the other maids stopped talking. One of them, Nora, a Syrian woman with sharp eyes and a bitter mouth, looked her up and down and smirked. "Late start," she said, pretending to wipe the countertop. Amina said nothing. She kept her head down, her expression blank. But as she passed the mirrored surface of the stainless steel refrigerator, she caught her own reflection. Her full cheeks looked a little rounder. Her belly, though still hidden under the uniform, felt tighter. Everything in her screamed to run, but where would she go? By mid-afternoon, Zaid hadn't said a word. He didn't summon her. He didn't look for her. It was as though she had disappeared, like smoke in the wind. But she had to talk to him. She had to. Not for love, not even for truth, but for the child growing inside her. She couldn't carry this alone. She wouldn't. That evening, just after dusk, she gathered her courage and went upstairs again. This time, she waited outside his study until she saw the woman and baby leave. She didn't look them in the eyes. She couldn't. She knocked once, then twice. "Come in," came his voice. She stepped inside, heart pounding. Zaid sat behind a massive dark wood desk, his laptop open, sleeves rolled up, fingers rubbing the bridge of his nose. He looked up slowly when she entered, and something in his gaze shifted. "Amina," he said softly, almost too softly. She stood straight. "I need to talk to you, sir." He nodded, motioning for her to close the door. She did. "What is it?" "I—" Her throat closed. She swallowed hard. "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air like smoke from a fire. He blinked. Once, twice, then silence. Amina waited. She stared at the floor, wishing she could vanish into it. After what felt like a full minute, he finally spoke. "How long have you known?" "3 weeks." "And you're sure?" She looked up, her eyes wide with pain. "Yes, I'm sure." He exhaled slowly, leaning back in his chair, his hands steepled in front of him. For a moment, he looked like a stranger, not the man who had touched her, not the man who had looked at her as if she mattered. "I didn't mean for this to happen," he said. "You know that, don't you?" "I didn't either," she whispered. "Things are complicated." Amina felt her blood boil. "You have a wife." He didn't deny it. "You have a child." Still silence. Her voice trembled. "Was I just a mistake? A distraction?" Zaid looked at her now, really looked. "No, but this wasn't supposed to become real." Her chest tightened. "It is real. It's inside me, Zaid." He stood then, walked to the window, pulling back the curtain to look out at the darkened courtyard. "You'll be taken care of. I'll make arrangements. Quiet ones. Discreet ones." Amina froze. "Are you asking me to leave?" He turned to her. "I'm asking you to protect yourself and the child. There are people in my family who wouldn't understand, who would react badly." Amina felt tears sting her eyes. "So I carry your child in secret, like a shame? Like something to hide?" His expression was unreadable. "I didn't know you were this weak," she said quietly. That hit him. He flinched. Without another word, she opened the door and walked out. Her legs were shaking, her breath shallow, but her spine was straight. She was not a secret. She was a mother now, and she would not be invisible again. The following days passed like a ghost moving through the mansion, silent, unspoken, heavy. Amina returned to her duties, but her routine had shifted. She no longer walked with her head bowed. Her hands still scrubbed floors and polished brass, but her heart no longer cowered. She hadn't spoken to Zaid since that night. He hadn't tried to reach her. Not a message, not a word. But she could feel him watching her sometimes, on the edge of the hallway through a sliver of a door. There was something fragile in his silence, like a man building a wall but unsure whether he was trying to keep something out or hold something in. One morning as she was dusting the upper corridor, she overheard voices. Not the usual soft discussions of staff or the hushed whispers of business partners. These voices were raised, sharp, male, angry. She froze just outside Zaid's study. "You think this won't get out?" barked one voice, older, more gruff, laced with panic. "A maid, Zaid? You've humiliated this family enough." "I said I'm handling it," Zaid replied, voice tight and low. "There are people watching. Do you think they won't see what she's carrying? You need to fix this before it becomes a scandal." Amina felt her stomach turn. She stepped back quickly, her feet making no sound on the carpet, her breath caught in her throat. She couldn't bear to hear more. Back in her room, she sat on the floor, knees pulled to her chest. This wasn't just a complication. It was a threat to his name, and that meant her child was a liability, a risk to be controlled, hidden, erased if necessary. But she wasn't going to let that happen. The next morning, she went to the medical wing. The mansion was so grand, so absurdly wealthy that even the doctor's suite inside it felt like a private hospital. Dr. Khadija, the family physician, was surprised to see her. The older woman raised an eyebrow, but said nothing as she guided Amina into the exam room. "I'm pregnant," Amina said bluntly, "and I need to know everything, about the baby, about my health, everything." Dr. Khadija gave her a long, unreadable look, then nodded slowly. "Very well. Lie back." The ultrasound machine hummed softly. As the wand slid over her abdomen, the screen lit up with grainy shapes. Amina stared at it, heart pounding. Then, there, a flicker, a shape no bigger than a fist, but unmistakably alive. And then came the sound, the heartbeat, fast, fierce, like tiny drums inside her. Her eyes filled with tears. "You're about 9 weeks along," the doctor said gently. "Healthy so far. Strong heartbeat." Amina nodded, lips trembling. "Do you have support?" "No," she said, then corrected herself, "Not yet." That night, Zaid found her in the courtyard. She was sitting by the fountain, moonlight catching the curve of her face. Her hands rested on her belly, protective, even though nothing yet showed. He stood behind her, silent. She didn't turn around. "Did you tell him?" she asked. "My uncle? Yeah." "What did he say?" Zaid hesitated. What men like him always say. Amina took a breath, steady. "Then you should know I won't leave, and I won't give this child up. You don't have to be involved, but I will not disappear." His voice cracked slightly. "I don't want you to disappear." She stood now and turned to face him. "Then stop acting like you're ashamed of me." Zaid looked tired, more tired than she had ever seen him. But in his eyes was something else. Regret? Guilt? Or maybe fear? "I'm not ashamed of you," he said. "I'm ashamed of how I handled everything." "Then fix it," she said softly. And with that, she walked past him, her head held high. She didn't need him to save her. She would save herself. But what Amina didn't know, what she couldn't yet imagine, was that someone else in the mansion had been listening. Someone who had been waiting for the right moment to strike. And that moment was coming soon. It began with little things. The first was a missing scarf, then a locked drawer left open, a laundry basket overturned. Amina had lived long enough in rich men's homes to know when something wasn't random. Someone had been in her room. At first, she brushed it off as coincidence or perhaps clumsiness, until one morning she found her prenatal vitamins spilled across the floor, crushed beneath someone's shoe. The bottle was shattered like glass beneath a secret war. That day, she didn't eat, she didn't cry. She sat perfectly still and stared at the doorway, wondering who had crossed it. She didn't tell Zaid. Not yet. Amina didn't want to appear fragile, not now, not when she was determined to stand tall. But she started sleeping with a chair jammed under the door handle. And every time she walked through the marble halls, she glanced behind her. She wasn't paranoid, she was being watched. Zaid had changed too. His silence was no longer cold. It was conflicted. He began leaving gifts in her room, fresh fruit, soft slippers, books in English and Arabic. He left notes without signing them. He didn't say, "I'm sorry," but she could feel that he was trying. One morning she found him in the courtyard garden, trimming the jasmine hedges like he was anyone else. Not a CEO, not the heir of one of Riyadh's wealthiest families, just a man holding pruning shears in trembling hands. She approached him quietly. "Zaid," she said. He looked up. She was ready to ask him if he had told his wife. But before the words could leave her lips, something rustled behind the hedge. They both froze. Zaid stepped around the bushes and spotted a shadow slipping away, a slender figure in a maid's uniform. It was Nora. Later that night, Amina lay in bed, unable to sleep. The air conditioning whispered against the ceiling, but her mind was loud. She knew Nora didn't like her. The sideways glances, the clipped tones, the way her conversations stopped when Amina entered a room. But this wasn't jealousy anymore. It was something darker. Just before dawn, someone slid a note under her door. She sat up instantly, her heart thudding. She unfolded the paper with trembling fingers. "He won't protect you when the truth comes out. You're nothing but a secret." No name, no signature, just the ugly truth written in cruel, narrow letters. She took the paper and walked straight to Zaid's wing. The sky was still violet blue, and the staff hadn't stirred yet. She banged on his door, her rage louder than her fear. He opened it wearing a robe, his eyes barely open. She held out the note. "Read it." He took it, his expression hardening with every word. "Who sent this?" he asked. Nora," she said. "I don't have proof, but I know it." He nodded once and told her to wait. 10 minutes later, Nora was brought to the same room, blinking in confusion. Zaid held up the note. She didn't even deny it. Instead, she smiled. "You think she loves you?" Nora said, her voice venomous. "She's using you, and when your father finds out about the thing inside her, he'll destroy everything you built." "Leave," Zaid said coldly. "I'm not going anywhere." He took a step closer. "Then I'll call the guard, and I will make sure you never work in this country again." That did it. Nora's expression shattered into fury, but she turned and stormed out. Zaid followed her, making sure she was gone. When he returned, Amina sat in the chair, her arms crossed over her belly. "She was right, you know," Amina said quietly. "Your father, he will come for me, won't he?" Zaid sank into the seat across from her, rubbing his hands together. "Yes," he whispered, "and he'll be worse than Nora." "So what now?" she asked. He looked at her, something hard in his gaze. "We leave." "Leave?" "Yes, I have land in Morocco, far from here. No one will find us." She stared at him. "You're saying this now?" "I should have said it before, but I'm saying it now." Silence fell between them again. Finally, Amina whispered, "I'll think about it." But deep down, she already knew. If she wanted to keep her child safe, she would have to run. It began with little things. The first was a missing scarf, then a locked drawer left open, a laundry basket overturned. Amina had lived long enough in rich men's homes to know when something wasn't random. Someone had been in her room. At first, she brushed it off as coincidence or perhaps clumsiness, until one morning she found her prenatal vitamins spilled across the floor, crushed beneath someone's shoe. The bottle was shattered like glass beneath a secret war. That day, she didn't eat, she didn't cry. She sat perfectly still and stared at the doorway, wondering who had crossed it. She didn't tell Zaid. Not yet. Amina didn't want to appear fragile, not now, not when she was determined to stand tall. But she started sleeping with a chair jammed under the door handle. And every time she walked through the marble halls, she glanced behind her. She wasn't paranoid, she was being watched. Zaid had changed too. His silence was no longer cold. It was conflicted. He began leaving gifts in her room, fresh fruit, soft slippers, books in English and Arabic. He left notes without signing them. He didn't say, "I'm sorry," but she could feel that he was trying. One morning she found him in the courtyard garden, trimming the jasmine hedges like he was anyone else. Not a CEO, not the heir of one of Riyadh's wealthiest families, just a man holding pruning shears in trembling hands. She approached him quietly. "Zaid," she said. He looked up. She was ready to ask him if he had told his wife. But before the words could leave her lips, Something rustled behind the hedge. They both froze. Zaid stepped around the bushes and spotted a shadow slipping away, a slender figure in a maid's uniform. It was Nora. Later that night, Amina lay in bed, unable to sleep. The air conditioning whispered against the ceiling, but her mind was loud. She knew Nora didn't like her. The sideways glances, the clipped tones, the way her conversation stopped when Amina entered a room. But this wasn't jealousy anymore. It was something darker. Just before dawn, someone slid a note under her door. She sat up instantly, her heart thudding. She unfolded the paper with trembling fingers. He won't protect you when the truth comes out. You're nothing but a secret. No name, no signature, just the ugly truth written it in cruel, narrow letters. She took the paper and walked straight to Zaid's wing. The sky was still violet blue, and the staff hadn't stirred yet. She banged on his door, her rage louder than her fear. He opened it wearing a robe, his eyes barely open. She held out the note. Read it. He took it, his expression hardening with every word. Who sent this? He asked. Nora, she said. I don't have proof, but I know it. He nodded once and told her to wait. 10 minutes later, Nora was brought to the same room, blinking in confusion. Zaid held up the note. She didn't even deny it. Instead, she smiled. You think she loves you? Nora said, her voice venomous. She's using you, and when your father finds out about the thing inside her, he'll destroy everything you built. Leave, Zaid said coldly. I'm not going anywhere. He took a step closer. Then I'll call the guard, and I will make sure you never work in this country again. That did it. Nora's expression shattered into fury, but she turned and stormed out. Zaid followed her, making sure she was gone. When he returned, Amina sat in the chair, her arms crossed over her belly. She was right, you know, Amina said quietly. Your father, he will come for me, won't he? Zaid sank into the seat across from her, rubbing his hands together. Yes, he whispered, and he'll be worse than Nora. So what now? She asked. He looked at her, something hard in his gaze. We leave. Leave? Yes, I have land in Morocco, far from here. No one will find us. She stared at him. You're saying this now? I should have said it before, but I'm saying it now. Silence fell between them again. Finally, Amina whispered, I'll think about it. But deep down, she already knew. If she wanted to keep her child safe, she would have to run. The streets of Tangier twisted like ancient scars. Amina walked them each morning with quiet determination, her swollen belly leading the way, wrapped beneath flowing fabric. The air smelled of salt and cumin, and the sea wind tangled her hair like a mother's fingers. She was beginning to feel whole again. She had carved out a life in exile, humble, but hers. Yet she couldn't shake the silence. Zaid had vanished. The letters had stopped. The calls ceased. Weeks stretched like rope, taut with waiting. Some nights, she stood on the edge of the hill, watching the distant ships and wondering if one of them carried his shame, his regret, or his corpse. Then, one afternoon, a letter arrived. But it wasn't from Zaid. It bore no stamp, no return address, just a blank envelope slipped under the door while she was napping. Inside, a single photo. Zaid, bruised, bleeding, and handcuffed. The caption on the back was written in Arabic, "This is what happens to traitors." Her knees buckled. She lay on the floor for an hour, clutching the photo to her chest, unable to scream. Her child kicked within her, fragile, confused, alive. She realized then, she wasn't just being watched. They had found her. Zaid's father hadn't let go. The next day, Amina fled. She took only what she could carry, papers, a little money, and a knife hidden in her dress hem. She paid a fisherman to ferry her across the water, telling him she was meeting family in the countryside. She gave a false name. He didn't ask questions. In the middle of the night, she arrived in a coastal village, where the wind howled and the ocean roared like it wanted to eat the earth. Amina found shelter in an abandoned stone hut used by shepherds in the rainy season. There she waited, for days, alone. No contact. No clue if Zaid was dead or if this was another cruel warning. She stopped eating. Her body grew weak. The baby moved less. Her eyes became dry from crying until they couldn't cry anymore. Then the pain came. A slow burn at first, then sharp, then unbearable. Amina screamed into the night, doubled over on the dirt floor. There was no time, no midwife, no warmth, just blood and pain and wind. She gave birth on her knees, alone. She thought she would die. She thought her daughter would too. But as the dawn broke, cracked in silver, the child screamed. And Amina survived. Her hands were shaking, her body soaked in blood and sweat, but she held her baby to her chest like a lioness. Her daughter's skin was dark and perfect. Her eyes, just like his. She named her Salma after her grandmother, after the woman who once told her, "A woman's silence is the world's most dangerous sound." She would never be silent again. 2 weeks later he came. Zaid appeared at the edge of the hill where the shepherd's hut lay, stumbling in worn shoes, his face gaunt, beard thick, eyes hollow. Amina stepped out, the baby strapped to her chest, fire in her eyes. "What do you want?" she spat. "I'm here," he whispered. "I found you." "Too late." "I escaped," he said, his voice trembling. "They locked me away. My father, he tried to have me declared insane. He told the court I was mentally unfit, that you seduced me, that the child wasn't mine." "And you let him?" she snapped. "I fought him every day. I lost everything, my company, my passport, my citizenship, everything." "Then why are you here?" He stepped closer. "Because I'd rather be nothing with you than everything without you." Amina stared at him. He fell to his knees. "I know what I did. I know I was weak. I hid behind silence, behind privilege. But I won't hide anymore. Not from you, not from her." He looked up at Salma. The baby blinked, then reached for him. Amina's breath caught. Zaid wept. He didn't touch the child, not yet. He waited, asked permission with his eyes. Amina stepped forward slowly. She placed Salma in his arms. The man who once held empires in his hands now trembled, just holding a baby. He kissed her forehead. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Amina looked away, her throat tightening. "Sorry doesn't fix the blood I lost, or the months I thought you were dead." "I'll never leave again," he said. "Even if they find me, even if they kill me, I am yours, I am hers." "And if your father comes?" Zaid stood, baby still in his arms. "Then he'll find something he's never seen before. His son standing for something real." Amina felt the tears come. This time they didn't sting. They healed. That night they built a fire outside the hut. Amina held Salma as Zaid told stories of his childhood, of empty palaces and lonely rooms, of lessons taught by fear and meals eaten in silence. He confessed everything. And in the dark, they rebuilt themselves. Not as servant and master, not as scandal and shame, but as two souls who chose each other after the world gave them every reason not to. If this story broke your heart and then stitched it back together, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with someone who believes that love can survive anything. Because when power fails, when blood betrays, and when the world turns cold, sometimes love is the only fight worth staying alive for. Some stories are not about power, but what happens when the powerless rise. This is the story of Amina, a woman whose body was dismissed, whose voice was unheard, but whose love and strength rewrote her destiny. From the first moment we enter Zaid al-Hariri's world of sterile marble and heavy silences, we are reminded of the vast chasm between class and humanity. Zaid is a high-ranking Arab executive, groomed for legacy, surrounded by wealth, but emotionally bankrupt. Amina, in contrast, is an obese, young-faced African maid, hired to be invisible. But what the world sees as excess, her body, her presence, is in fact her armor, her story, her truth. What makes this narrative so profoundly moving is the way vulnerability is shared and then broken. When Zaid al-Hariri steps into Amina's room on a night of darkness, both literal and emotional, it is not lust that shocks us, but the silence that follows. The story doesn't offer fantasies of love at first touch. Instead, it confronts us with the brutal truth of consequence without accountability. Amina is left alone, pregnant, and still cleaning the very floors walked by the man who now avoids her. But this isn't just a story of betrayal, it's a story of awakening. Amina's journey from shame to strength is one of the most emotionally satisfying arcs in recent storytelling. She doesn't collapse under the weight of abandonment. She stands, She seeks answers. She dares to enter his private study and speak her truth, only to find another woman holding Zaid's child. This moment isn't just dramatic, it's heartbreaking. Amina isn't just betrayed, she's erased, reduced to nothing more than a mistake. And yet, she does not vanish. When Zaid offers to make arrangements, the story reaches its moral center. Amina doesn't accept silence. She doesn't accept secrecy. She makes a declaration every viewer should remember. I will not be invisible again. The tension escalates when a jealous coworker turns from bitter to dangerous. Through threats, sabotage, and chilling notes, the mansion that once symbolized order becomes a battlefield. The threat shifts from emotional to physical. Amina is no longer just a discarded woman. She's a hunted one. Her decision to flee, alone and pregnant, is a masterclass in quiet courage. No music swells, no dramatic speeches, just a woman with a game, a heartbeat inside her, and a will to survive. And then, the birth. In a stone hut, in pain, in fear, she gives life to her daughter, Salma, alone, with nothing but her strength, her blood, and the memory of all she has endured. It is here, in the most primal moment, that the story transcends. It becomes not about Zaid or wealth or revenge, but about motherhood, about what it means to choose life, even when no one has chosen you. When Zaid finally returns, bruised, broken, stripped of wealth, we expect a reconciliation. But what we receive is something deeper: accountability. He kneels, he begs, he weeps, not as a savior, but as a man who has finally understood the cost of silence, of privilege, of fear. Their reunion doesn't erase the past, it doesn't fix everything, but it offers something more real: a future, a small fire, a baby between them. And the words, "I would rather be nothing with you than everything without you." That line alone could bring tears to the eyes of anyone who has ever felt forgotten. In the end, this story doesn't ask us to believe in fairy tales. It asks us to believe in redemption, not just for Zaid, but for every person who has been overlooked, underestimated, or unwanted. Amina's body, once seen as shameful, becomes a vessel of strength. Her child, once considered a scandal, becomes her salvation. And her voice, once silenced, becomes a weapon stronger than gold. This isn't just a love story, it's a testimony to women who endure, to men who wake up too late but still try, to children born not of fairy tales but of fire, and to the truth that even in exile, even in a hut by the sea, love can still be born.